Hi guys, welcome back to Cloud Tech. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a Spring Boot project and then we will perform CRUD operations on it. To create a project, I'm going to use Spring Initializer. So I'll come here, I'll select the project build. So build tool, I'm going to use Maven as a build tool. So I'll select Maven. Then I'm going to choose Java as a programming language. So I'll select Java here. And inside the Spring Boot version, I'll select 3.5.3 as a stable version. Now I'll fill the project metadata. So you can see com.cloudtech. I'm going to mention it as a group ID. Then we'll use student service because we are going to perform four operations on this student service. Basically, create a student, read a student, update the student, and delete a student by particular ID. Then we'll keep the student service as a name. I'll keep the description as it is, and you can see the package name. I can use com.cloudtech. And then I'm going to do the packaging as a jar. So I'll select jar, and then I'm going to use JDK 17 as a Java version. Now I need to add the dependencies. So I have added four dependencies: Spring Web to write the REST APIs. Then I'm going to use MySQL. So I have MySQL as a database. So I'll select MySQL driver as a dependency. Then I'm going to use data JPA repository to perform the database related operations. So I'll use Spring Data JPA dependency and Lombok to reduce the boilerplate code to generate data setters and constructors. Now, when I click on generate button, I should be able to download the project. And I'll open that project into IntelliJ. So I open this using IntelliJ. Now here you can see the project has been opened and it is packaging is available. Now we need to create four operations for which we need to write different layers. So every project should have different layers like controller layer, service layer, repository layer. There should be entity, there should be DTO. So I'm going to create these layers. So let's create the package first. I'll right click on new, then create package. So first thing I need to create a package for controller layer. So I'll create controller. Then I'll create another package from this controller layer. We normally go to service layer. So I'll create service package. Then normally from this service layer, we go to repository layer to perform database related operations. So I'll create a repository layer. Now we should have entity which should be saved into database. So I'll create a package for that entity. Okay, let me rename it. It is entity. So entity. Now when we send some information as a part of request body, so that should be inside DTO. So I'll create this as a DTO package. Okay, now we are going to perform these operations on student. So let's create a student entity. So I'll create new Java class and I'll name it as student. Now inside this student, we can write the fields like private, int, student ID. Then I can write private string student name. Then I can have private string and I'll make it as address and then I'll write private int marks. So these four fields are sufficient. Now as this is going to be our entity, so I'll use at direct entity annotation. So this entity annotation will map this student Java class with the student in your database table. Now here I need to declare a primary key, so I can use at direct ID, and then I'm going to generate the value for this ID as a sequence or identity. So I can use at direct generated value annotation, and here I can mention the strategy by which I want to generate this value. So it can be generation type dot identity, and then the rest of the fields I can keep as it is. Now we might need the getter setter, so I can use at direct data annotation. So this is annotation available inside your Lombok. Then I might need an arguments constructor and all argument constructor. So I'm done with the creation of this entity. Now again, we need to create a student into, or we need to send the student information as a part of DTO. So what I will do, I'll come here and I'll create a class student request DTO, student request DTO. So we'll take this information from the client. So we will take student name, address, and mark because we are generating the student automatically, student ID using identities, generation type as identity. Now we have this. So what we will do, we'll use add direct data to generate getter setters. Then we'll use add direct no arguments constructor and we'll have all argument constructor. Now we are done with the creation of student request video. Next thing is we need to get this information or creation of the student or saving this information into student. So what we need to do, we need to basically connect with our database and save that information into database, for which I need a JPA repository. So I'll right click here and I'll create a new Java class. Ideally it should be interface. So I'll use student repository as an interface. Now this interface should extend JPA repository. So we will be able to use the functions which are available inside JPA repository. So here I need to mention the class which we are going to map as a JPA entity, and then we'll use the data type for your primary key. Okay, now I'm done with the creation of JPA repository. Next thing is I need to save the student information. So what I will do, I'll come inside the service and I'll try to create a class with the student service names, student service. Now inside this student service, I need to perform the operations related to student management. Basically, we need to create a student. So what I'll do, first thing is we need to make this capable of injection. So I'll use a direct service so that if anyone wants to inject this, you should be able to inject it. Now I'll create an instance of student repository to perform the operations using JPA repository. So I can come here, private student repository, student repository. Now we need to inject this using a direct auto void. So I'll use a direct auto void for injection. Now first thing is we need to save this student. So I'll write a method public student and then create student. Now here I need to pass the student information. So I can use the information which is coming from student request DTO, and I'll use it as DTO. Now we need to save this information into a database, that for which we should have entity. So what I will do, I'll create an object of student because this is our entity, and then we'll try to save that information into database. So we need to set the fields of the student entity. So I'll use set student name and we'll get this from DTO, which is coming from your client. Similar to this, I'll use student.set student marks and I'll get it from DTO, student.dto.get marks, and then again student dot set address and I'll take it from DTO, student DTO dot get address. Now I got the information about the student. I just need to save that information into database. So I can use student repository dot save and then I can pass the student. Okay, once I do this, I should be able to save the information into database. Now I'll extract a variable. Just give me a second. So I'll extract a variable out of this. So when I basically save the information into database, I'll get a student which is saved into database. I'll take this and I'll make it as saved student, and then I can return the student as it is. I guess I'll use return return saved student. Okay, now I'm done with the saving of the student. So what I can do, I can directly return this. I'll inline this variable so I can return it. Now we need to call this method on API execution, for which I need to write an API. So I'll come inside controller layer. I'll create a class with the name as student controller. I'll come here. Now we need to annotate this class using a direct REST controller so that whenever there is an API which needs to be executed, will be coming inside this class. Now, first thing is we need to call the method of service layer or student service. So I need to inject student service here. So I'll use student service and then student service. Here I need to inject it using auto void. So I'll use auto void. Now we need to write a method which should be invoked on a particular API. So I'll write same method like public student and then create student because I'll just import this one, and then here we need to pass the student request detail because we are going to get that information from request body. And now this request body needs to be mapped with our student request details. I'll use that direct request body annotation. Okay. Now here I need to simply call the method from student service. I'll use student service dot create student, and I'll pass the detail as it is. Okay. Now this method needs to be invoked somewhere. So we need to write an API endpoint. So here I can write an API endpoint something like using post mapping. So it should be at direct post mapping, and I'll write the API endpoints I create. Okay, I can again write a base endpoint using a direct request mapping. So it should be capital R request mapping, and then I can write a base endpoint like students. Okay, now this will create a student into database. Now we need to add the database related information inside application.properties. So what I will do, I'll copy the information which I have with me. So I'll paste this information here. So you can see this is my database URL where my database is running. This is username and password. And then this is the JDBC driver for your MySQL. And here I have mentioned DDL auto as update. So if there is a table in database, we will use that table. Otherwise, it will create a new table and perform the operations on this table. And then I can print the SQL queries on the console. So I have enabled that flag using show SQL as true. Okay, now we'll start this application and see if it works for at least first API. So I'll just enable annotation processing. Okay, so my application is started on port 8080. So I'll come here and I'll create a new request, which will be localhost colon 8080 where our application is running. Now this is the base URL and then create. Now this is post mapping. So I'll select the post as a HTTP method. Then we need to pass the body. So I'll make it JSON, and now we'll use the fields which are there inside our request detail. So I'll copy this field student name. So I'll paste it here inside double quote. Then I'll come here and mention student name like Mahesh, then comma. Then I'll copy another field which is address. So I'll paste it here and then I'll make it as Pune. And then we have marks. So I'll copy this and paste it here. And then we'll mention mark as 90. Okay, now I'm done with the creation of API. So I'll just hit this API and see if we are able to save the information into database. So you can see I'm getting the information which is saved into database. If we need to see it into database, you can come here and fire a query on database, select star from student. And now let us see. You can see the information has been saved into database. Next thing is we need to read the information about students. So what we can do, we can come here inside student service and I can write another API which is used to return. I mean, we will try to return all the students. Okay, so here what we will do, we'll write a method public. Now here I'm going to write return a list of students. I'll use list of student and then I'll write method name as get all students. Okay, now here I'll return list of all the students which are there in database. I'll use student repository dot find all method, and this method returns the list of all the students. I'll just return that list as it is. Okay, I'm done with a return of all the students. Similar to this, what I will do, I'll write one more method where we can get the student information by ID. So again, I will write a method public. As we are going to get information about a student, so I'll return student, and then I'll write a method get student by ID. And here we need to pass the student ID. So I'll pass a parameter student ID. And then what we will do, we'll try to find the student information by ID. So there is a method inside student repository. student repository dot find by ID, and will pass this student ID. Okay, so this will give me the student, and then as it is returning optional, so I'll get the student using get method. Okay, and then I'll return this as it is. Okay, so I'm done with this. Now this method needs to be invoked on APIs. So I'll write the APIs here. So similar to this, I can write another API where I need a list of students. So I'll use list of student, and then I'll write method name as get all students. Okay, and then I'll call the student service dot get all students. So this will give me all the students from database. Now this method needs to be invoked on some endpoints. I'll write get mapping, and here I'll write something like slash all. So this, when I invoke this endpoint, it will give me all the students from the database. Similar to this, I'll write another method which will give me a student by particular ID. So here I can write public, then student, and then get student by ID. So this is going to be a method name. Now I need to take the student ID. So I'll get student ID from the user, and then we'll call a method which is basically student service dot get student by ID, and I'll pass the student ID here. Now we need to call this method on a particular endpoint. So I'll write a method like add direct. So I'll use at the rate get mapping annotation, and inside that annotation, basically I need to pass the student ID dynamically. So I can use an expression like this one. So this is an expression which will allow you to pass the student ID dynamically. Okay, and here I can use a direct path variable annotation. So this student ID will be mapped with this student ID. Okay, the student ID which is coming from this path will be mapped with this variable. Okay, we are missing return statement here, so we'll add that statement. And now I'll rerun this application and see if we are able to get a list of all the students. Okay, so my application is getting restarted. I guess I can see the application is started on 8080. Now we'll create one more student. So here I'll provide some other name like Sachin. I'll make it as Solapur, and then I'll make the marks as 95, and I'll try to create another student. So I got the another student. Now what I will do, I'll use another API which will be useful to get all the students. So I'll write students slash all, and this will be a get method, so we don't need to write anything else. And if I execute this API, I should get a list of all the students from the database. So you can see I'm getting the information about first student, second student, basically all the students from the database. Now if I go into database and see the students, so you can see I have two students into my database. Next thing is I need to get a student by ID. So instead of this, what I can do, I can pass student ID as 1. So I should get the information about a particular student. If I execute this API, you can see I'm getting the information about a particular student with student ID 1. If I make it 2, then I should be able to get the student with ID 2. Now we are done with the two operations. One is create, other is read operation. The next operation is update operation. For that, again, I can go into student service, and then I can create a method which will update the students to public students. I'm going to return the updated student. So I'll write update student, and here I'm going to take the student as a student object. So I'm going to use student request detail in this detail. Okay, now I will get the student request details. First thing is I need to check whether the student is available or not. So for that, again, I can take one more parameter, which is student ID. So I'll be able to check whether the student is available in database or not. If the student is available into database, then we will update it. Okay. So here, what I will do first thing is I need to check whether the student is available or not. So what I can do, simply I can use this method to get the student. So here I'll student is equal to. So this will give me the student. Now if we get the student, so we just need to set the information which is coming from your request body. So I'll use S. So here I will check if S is not equal to null, then go ahead and update the information for that object. So S dot set student name, and it should be DTO dot get student name. Similar to this, it should be S dot set address, and it should be DTO dot get address, and then S dot set marks, and it should be DTO dot get marks. So I'm able to get the student using student repository dot find by ID, and now I'm checking whether the student is available or not. Okay, so okay, if the student is available, then I'll simply update that information as it is. So what I'll remove this if check, and I'll go ahead with the positive scenario. Now here, what we have done, we got the object from the database, we updated the information for that object or student, and then we need to save it. So I'll use student repository dot save the object which we have created, and then we'll return the same object. So I can use return statement as it is here. Okay, I'll just format this and I'll save it. Okay, now I'm done with the saving of this. Now this needs to be invoked on a particular API. So I'll come here and I'll write one more API. So it will be at direct port mapping, because we are going to update a student information. And here I'll write something like update, and then I'll use a method public student, and then update student. Here I need to pass the student information as a part of request body. So I can use a direct request body annotation. And then I'm going to pass student request DTO. It should be DTO. And then I'm going to take student ID as well. So it will be integer student ID. Okay. So here what I will do, instead of having one more endpoint, I can use the same endpoint, and I'll use the student ID as a part of path variable. So I'll use a direct path variable. So we'll take that student ID, and it will be student request in my request body. Now here, what we need to do, we need to call the student service dot update student. We'll pass the DTO, and then we'll pass the student ID. It will be student ID, and then we'll return the updated student. Shall type the return statement. Okay. Now I just formatted the code and it should work. So let me restart the application and see if it works. Okay, so my application is restarted. Next thing is what I need to do. I need to basically update the student information. So instead of post, we have put method because we are updating. So it should be put. Now I don't have extra endpoint. I'm just passing the student ID here. So let us consider this is student ID 1, and I need to update the student name. So for student ID 1, we had student name as Mahesh, marks were 90, and address was Pune. So I'll change this information. So instead of having Mahesh, I'll make it as Rahul. Then we'll change the address to be Mumbai, and then we'll update the marks as 85, and I'll call this API. So it will check whether this student is available or not. If it is available, then it will update the information and it will return the updated information. So you can see the student is available. Now we'll see into database if the student information is updated or not. So you can see for student ID 1, the information has been updated. We have new name, which is Rahul, marks are 95, and address is Mumbai. So we are done with the 3 operations. The next operation is delete operation. So what I can do, I can again come back to student service and will delete a particular student by ID. So I'll write one more method public. Then I will simply return a string like student deleted successfully, and then student string, and then we'll write a method which is delete student by ID. And here I'll pass the student ID. So it will be student ID. Now we need to use student repository dot delete by ID, and I'm going to pass student ID to delete it. Okay, so once we delete, we normally send a message saying that student deleted successfully. So I'll return a message saying that return student deleted successfully. Okay, so when we delete the student, I should be able to send a message saying that student deleted successfully. Now I'll come back to controller and I'll write a method which should be invoked when we delete a student, or when we invoke an endpoint, that method should be invoked. Okay, so I'll use public, then I'll write a string and then write a method delete student by ID. Here I'm passing student ID using path variables. I'll use a direct path variable annotation, and here I'll pass student ID. Now here we need to call the method which is student service dot delete student by ID, and I'm passing student ID here. Okay, now this method needs to be invoked on a particular endpoint. So again, I'll use that direct delete mapping annotation, and I'll copy this thing as it is. So we are passing the student ID dynamically. So I'll use path variable so that when I pass the student ID, it will be mapped with this dynamically. Okay, I'll save this and I'll try to rerun the application and see if it works. So I'm missing return statement. Let me add that return statement here and rerun the application. Okay, now my application is started on 8080. I'll come here. I'll just check all the students which are there in database. I'll give a call. So I can see there are two students with ID 1 and 2. I'll try to delete one student. So I'll come here, change the HTTP method. It should be delete. And now I'm going to delete a student with ID 2. I don't need body, so I'll make it as none. And then I'll send a request. So once I send the request, you can see student deleted successfully. That means the student has been deleted from the database. I'll go and see if the student is deleted. So you can see the student has been deleted from the database. Okay, guys, so that's it from this video. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. Bye bye.